Hello dear children, today we are going to discuss about parts of a flower and sexual reproduction in plants. Flower is a reproductive organ. A flower has commonly four parts. These parts in order from the outside are sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels or pistil. Sepals are collectively called calyx. The sepals protect the young flower bud, and when green, they also perform photosynthesis. Large, brightly colored petals, collectively called corolla. The petals attract insects for pollination. They also protect stamens and pistils. Of these four parts, stamens and carpels are the important parts, as these take part in sexual reproduction. The stamens are the male reproductive part, while the carpel or pistil is the female part. Stamens are collectively called androecium. Each stamen consists of thread-like filament and bilobed anther. Each lobe has two pollen sacs. Within the pollen sacs are contained pollen grains. When fully matured, the pollen sacs rupture and liberate pollen grains. The pollen grains are generally powdery particles of different shapes and sizes. Pistils are collectively called gynoecium. Each pistil consists of a basal ovary, a middle style, and an uppermost stigma. Stigma serves as the landing place for pollen during pollination. Style is the tubular slender stalk which connects the stigma to the ovary. Ovary is the solent basal portion composed of one or many pistils. The inner cavity of the ovary may be a single chamber or divided into several chambers, each containing a number of rounded bodies, the ovules. The flowers, which contain either only the pistil or only the stamens, are called unisexual flowers. For example, cucumber, corn, papaya, etc. The flowers which contain both stamens and pistil are called bisexual flowers. For example, mustard, rose, hibiscus, etc. When you visit a garden during flowering season, you observe many butterflies, bees, and moths. What are the insects doing? Though these insects visit the flowers for nectar or honey, but at the same time, they help in pollination. Pollination is essential for reproduction. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the ripe anther to the stigma. The transfer of pollen grains to the stigma can take place in two ways: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anthers of flowers of one plant to the stigma of a flower of another plant. Cross-pollination often involves various external agencies to carry pollen grains from one flower to another one. These agencies may be air, water, insects, or animals. Most flowers are pollinated by insects. When an insect visits a flower, the pollen grains get deposited on the body of the insect. When this insect visits another flower, the deposited pollen grains now gets dusted on the stigma of the second flower, thus bringing about pollination. Have you noticed the flowers pollinated by insects and those by wind? Fertilization takes place after pollination. The male gamete, carried by the pollen tube, reaches the female gamete present inside the ovule. The fusion of male gamete with the female gamete is called fertilization. After fertilization, the fertilized egg divides, grows, and gives rise to an embryo. The ovule develops into seed. Thus, embryo is present inside the seed. The ovary develops into a fruit. Seeds are thus present inside the fruit. The seed contains a dormant embryo. Germination is the formation of a seedling developed from the embryo. If the seed gets enough water, suitable temperature, and air, then they will start to germinate. Germination in any plant ends with the formation of a seedling. The roots of the seedling absorb water and minerals from the soil. The leaves start manufacturing food for the young plant, which keeps growing and becomes a mature plant and produces flowers and seeds. Seed dispersal is necessary for the healthy growth of a plant. Seed dispersal helps the plants to prevent overcrowding, avoid competition for sunlight, water, and minerals, and invade new habitats. Seeds and fruits of plants are carried away by wind, water, and animals.